Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a mistake I was making, or I caught myself attempting to make while I was practicing the other day. Um, because there's so many like little things that I know better, but I still am tempted to kind of fall into. And I think it's a lot like logical fallacies, where even if you know about them, you're still likely to fall for a lot of them. I think confirmation bias is probably the worst one that people, even if they're aware of it, they just can't help but get drawn into that one. Like, I'm 100% guilty of that. Sunk cost is one that I see people fall into a lot. I've gotten better at catching myself on that one. Loss aversion, those are really popular fallacies that are easy to fall into, even if you know about them. And if you don't know about them, then you're really at risk. So I talk about that because there are a million things with practice that are exactly like this, where if you're not looking out for it, you're going to fall into it all the time. Because even though I know better and I constantly try to keep myself from doing it, I fall into these mistakes. And a lot of it just comes down to the fact that your brain is lazy. It is seeking the path of least resistance, and it will justify whatever it is to make you practice in a way that makes it work less hard. So I was working on a little chunk of music. I think I had like a little 8-bar chunk, right? And I would get somewhere around 6 bars in, and there was just this tricky spot. And I'd hit it, and I'd kind of like, I'd struggle at it just a little bit. And then I would back up, and I would start that section over again and be like, oh, I'll get it this time. Because, I was going at a pretty good clip, At that point, I was already at a decent tempo where it wasn't going to be this crazy thing where it took me a long time to play those first, 5 or so bars. But that's still a huge waste. And I'm like, why am I playing those 5 bars that I know I have down? I need to just slow down and look at this bar, this one little tricky spot. And yeah, like, is that a thing that you've caught yourself doing where you totally back up? Now, I mean, I've already talked plenty about how you should be working in like these little sections. You should section out your music instead of working front to back or back to front. I don't think that working back to front is that much better than working front to back. I think working back to front is a polishing strategy for the end of practice. When you're very close to a performance, once everything's kind of under your fingers. But too many people take that and extrapolate it out to, oh, you should just practice from the end. Not really, unless, it's at a near sight readable level for you. Then that's we'll talk about it another time. But no, even when you're working these small little sections and you're being intelligent about it, you've picked a small section to work on, even if it's a little 4-bar chunk, super tiny. You do that thing where you catch that little spot where you hang up and then you start back at the beginning of that little section. You're doing the same thing as the people who start at the very beginning of the piece. They start 20 bars back or 30 bars back and just keep trying to make these rough runs straight through the piece, hoping it'll get better each time. You're still doing that. You're just doing it at such a smaller level. And since you are, if you're doing it in such a tiny chunk of music, you're thinking, oh, it's not the same. It's not as bad. Yeah, it's not as bad, but you're doing the same thing. So just be aware of that. Just catch yourself, because I totally just caught myself doing it. Like I had started that section over a couple of times, and granted, I would just, yeah, a lot of times I'll do that, and it's like I missed it on one pass, and I'll get it on the next pass, and then I'll nail it the next 4 passes. But no, I had missed it a couple of times, and something in my head made me just keep wanting to start at the beginning of that section rather than intentionally stopping and paying attention to what I was working on. So you always have to be very kind of aware and in the moment. And yeah, just like with logical fallacies, you have to be constantly looking out for these little things where your brain tries to trick you into practicing less effectively. So I think that might be the shortest video I've ever made, and that was exactly the topic I wanted to cover, so I'm hoping that was helpful. I'm going to peace out. I've got so much work to get done.